This open meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, in the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the Governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. I hereby call to order the November 5th meeting of the Triton Regional School Committee and the District Communication Committee at 6:30 p.m. I'm Narissa Wallen, Chair of the Triton Regional School Committee, and I would like to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. So this would be a good time to do introductions as well. So I think we can just go around. I'm Narissa, obviously, I think you all know me, and I chair Triton School Committee. I don't know who wants to go next. And call on people
since we're all in different orders.
Why don't you go, Brian, since you're already talking?
I'm Brian Forget. I'm the superintendent of Triton, and I believe I know you all. How about we'll just do a little tag? All right, Maureen, you're it.
Maureen Heffernan, Triton School Committee, and I'll tag Paul Myatt.
Paul Myatt, Newbury, represented to the Triton School Committee.
Who are you tagging, Paul?
Tag someone.
Right, Jeff.
Jeff Walker, Newbury Selectman. Oh, tag someone. I got Michael. I see you.
Mike Doyle, Newbury Selectman. I will tag Alicia Greco.
Alicia Greco, Newbury Board of Selectmen, and I will tag Kim.
Kim Curto, Assistant Superintendent, and I will tag Neil Harrington. You're it.
Neil Harrington, Town Manager in Salisbury, and I will tag anybody that's left.
I think it's just Peter.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whoever that is.
Yeah, I don't know if Peter can see us. And then Sandy Susie is here as well, taking minutes.
Yes. All right. Thank you. For this meeting, the Triton School Committee is convening remotely via Zoom using the information posted on the district's website, identifying how the public may join. If you are personally attending by video conference using your device's camera, please be aware that others may be able to see you. Committee members and administrators, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you are not speaking. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the district's website with the agenda posting unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda. Each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. So welcome everyone tonight. I cannot believe, I believe it's been an entire month since we met, which is crazy because it feels like a day and a year all at the same time. So I know there's a lot to catch up on, and I want to get into that since I'm sure you have questions on what's been going on and comments. So let's go first to the meeting notes. Can everyone just look through the notes from the October 1st meeting and see if you have any comments, questions, or things that need to be changed? Those were included in the agenda packet that was sent out. All right, seeing none, we actually don't need an approval on that because they're not official minutes, they're just notes. So we'll move on to the Triton Fall reopening update, and I'm gonna bump that one over to Brian.
Here we go, sorry. So we have a nice small group, and so I'm gonna give you just a quick synopsis of where we are at, and then hopefully answer any questions that you might have as far as our process. So we shifted, the committee took a vote. Original vote was back in September on the 30th for a shift on the 13th. That did not happen. So when another vote happened sometime in mid-October, and we shifted the week of Monday, October 26th into our hybrid model. So Monday was a PD day, final day to get the buildings all ready with staff with no students there. And then as of Tuesday, October 27th, we shifted to our hybrid learning model. So what that means is every Monday, all students are remote. And then we have two cohorts. Cohort A, students are in person on Tuesday and Thursday. and cohort B students are in person on Wednesday and Friday. We do have high priority students, roughly 150 to 200 students who are in the buildings every day. Those are not simply students who are on an IEP. There's certainly about a quarter to a third of our IEP, our students with disabilities, are in the school every day, but there are also ELL students. There are students with mental health challenges, family situations where we just simply know that without them being in the building, learning is not going to be taking place. So as of the 27th, we shifted to that hybrid model. At the same time, we also shifted into offering a remote, we just have to start calling it the remote academy. So a remote academy, which is for families who, for whatever reason, are choosing to keep their students in remote. So that might be a family who has a medical complication and simply can't just risk given COVID, or others who just feel like that model is better for their students. So that we have in the vicinity of, what do we say today, Kim? 250, 60 students who are, which is about 11 to 10% or 11 to 12% of our population. So it's interesting. Actually, it's about the same number of high priority students. We have about 8, 9, 10% of our students high priority in every day, and we have 10, 11 ish % of our students who are remaining fully remote. So those students are not in our schools at all. Where we landed was not ideal. We've been saying all along, schools are set up to have all their students in one place. That is certainly the way a school is designed. Obviously, they're designed to have students in front or in the classrooms with our teachers. But when we were in full remote, obviously that was incredibly challenging for families, whether it's a childcare issue or students who don't learn well that way. But having all students in one place was a far superior alternative, given planning in the way that rolls out. So obviously not able to bring everyone back full in person. The hybrid model, unfortunately, it splits resources where educators who can't be paying attention to students in front of them, as well as at home. And then we have this third group of students who are never in the building. So teachers we're working through the hybrid model. So sometimes teachers are streaming live and teaching students in the classroom as well as at home. The majority of teachers are not doing that certainly routinely. Some are dabbling. There is a handful of teachers who are doing that as their base model. But without an ability to have students just continue remotely. So if I'm a student in Miss Croto's class and she's not streaming, I'm in with her one day and then I'm home the next day. So for a teacher to then be able to track and effectively plan an education for another student who's never in the classroom, it just simply doesn't work. So we landed with a model where we ended up collapsing elementary classrooms based on the number of students who were, are you a co-host, Marissa? So you can let Mike in. Mike tends to do this. I think he's always coming in and out. The elementary model was we collapsed elementary classrooms and we then created fully remote classes. So we currently have one classroom per grade at the elementary level, except for second grade where there were 2 full classrooms. And those teachers are working entirely remotely. So they're mostly working from the buildings, but students are entirely remotely. Those students never come in the building. At the middle school, similarly, it is Triton educators working with those students. They don't have, a homeroom teacher like you would have at the elementary level where it's departmentalized. And so there's a math teacher and a science teacher, and the students do rotate through a fairly set schedule as they would be if they were in the building. At the high school level, I forget the final number by the time it was all tallied, but there were over 160 different sections that were implicated by roughly 50, 55 students that chose to stay in the full remote option. And looking at that breadth of programming, there was just no way to figure out how to get those kids to meld into the classrooms successfully. So we landed, it's a program called Florida Virtual School. It was one of the 2 platforms that the state proposed. There are no Florida, it's not true. There are Florida virtual teachers. That's not the platform we signed up for. So this is the is it Buzz, Kim? Is that the name of the platform? Yeah, so the name of the platform is Buzz. So it's a largely independent, self-paced learning management system in coursework. We then have one, it's actually our library media specialist, Jennifer Jones, who is the kind of the technical guru, meets with students routinely, is the person to go to if there's an issue with getting in and out of classroom or structures within the system. Students also have a coach that they're meeting with at least once per day. And then they have availability of content specialists in each of the major content areas that if they have a specific question about a science course they're taking, they might be taking, I don't know, environmental science, and it may not be an environmental science teacher, but it will be a science teacher. And so the content's coming through the platform, but we do have those supports in place. So I would say that's probably our most controversial offering that we've made. I think the two big things that we keep hearing are questions about what students are doing on their remote, students who are in hybrid, what they're doing on their remote at-home days. And the second piece being those families that have opted for the full-time remote at the high school level, the concerns with Florida Virtual. There are certainly concerns with the platform and all that, but the majority of the concerns and angst is really a shift away from me in a classroom with a teacher or me at home with a teacher on my screen full day to a platform that is entirely, the design is self-paced. So it requires that a student is independent and somewhat autonomous. And certainly we're wrapping Triton educators around them to keep them focused, but it is not a traditional platform. So we, as of last night, the committee on my recommendation actually adjusted the amount of time that a family has to give us, the amount of notice a family has to give us to make an adjustment or a shift between models. Originally, the Department of Ed said, you have to give the district a reasonable amount of time. Never really defined it in writing. Started talking about that as 2 to 3 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. Since then, they've heard from pretty much every district that says, where we are now is we've been able to pretty much accommodate requests. So if I'm a family and my child's in hybrid and I want to shift to remote, we've been able to pretty much make that shift within days, or vice versa. Several families have tried the remote option and they're like, nope, want to come back to hybrid and have returned to hybrid. As we've now started to cap out classes and build those communities, it's not as simple anymore because you add one more student to a remote class and all of a sudden you've hit that tipping point. So we're starting to talk about at that point where we have to talk about reallocating resources. Is it additional staffing, hiring a teacher? So as of last night, the official required notice is 4 weeks. That doesn't mean it will always take 4 weeks, but if a family is going to be shifting between models, either into the fully remote or the remote back into hybrid, they have to have the expectation that it could take upwards of 4 weeks. So there's actually a message that's going out. I drafted it and stuck it in Blackboard Connect, and I forget what time it's coming out. It might be in boxes now, but it's coming out tonight, just to alert families of that. So that's the main rundown. So again, students are in classes. Call it roughly half the student body is in the building every day. We are still using the 6-foot standard. I don't know of many districts that have adopted the 3-foot standard, and certainly not when we're looking at daily COVID rates, where we're at now, where we were when they were going to 600 and then, oh no, when they're going to 800, and I believe today's is upwards of 1700. So it's certainly been a tough time to shift to hybrid in the midst of cases growing on a daily basis. So the committee's had continued discussions about the metric by which we'll use to shift back if we do need to shift back to remote. Any long-term shift would be determined by a metric and determined by the committee. If there was a case, and we keep talking about the Pentucket case, so if there was a situation like at Pentucket, one case over a weekend, another case identified on Monday, and these are cases within the school, students or staff, they by Tuesday made the decision to finish the week in remote. And so the final 2 days of that week ended up fully remote for those students. And it just gave those contact tracers time to go through the building, go through and with fidelity, make sure that they know all the contacts. And lo and behold, it was a case from outside from youth sports. And so they spent a full week and into the weekend confirming that, ultimately said, okay, it's safe. And then as of Monday, we're back onto their regular hybrid schedule. So that would be something that I would determine, and that would be on a moment's notice, right? That could change in a heartbeat over a matter of a day or two. But the committee is continuing to discuss what the metric might be for a longer shift to remote. I think the kind of the standard is 2 weeks at a time, that we would say if we're moving to remote fully as a school or a district, I think at a minimum, we're talking about 2 weeks, just to cut by the nature of a 14-day quarantine. So if we're talking about breaking a pattern, it has to be at least 2 weeks. So, we're going to have to see. The committee had a discussion last night. I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but certainly there was sentiment and agreement that we have to look at multiple weeks of data, right? Any, as you all know, in the towns, small numbers can tick from gray to yellow to green, or to green to yellow to red. You can jump right to red, and then you can jump back to white the next week. So it's with smaller communities, those are pretty volatile numbers that can shift you between the colors. So last week, obviously Salisbury in the red, Newbury in the yellow, Rowley still no color. Tonight, waiting to see that chart, and then it got shifted to tomorrow. So certainly more data, refining data. The state's caveating the data to say, look, is there a unique, is it a nursing home? Is it a prison in Middleton? Is it something that's driving that wouldn't necessarily, or that would somehow explain that the numbers that might look bad on face value are not as bad or as widespread? So we're going to continue to watch that. And the next committee meeting is 2 weeks from last night, so November 18th. And I suspect at that point, the committee will be ready to, or I think the chair will be pushing the committee to make a decision on that metric that they discussed last night. And I think some great discussion, and ultimately everyone, I think, wanted a chance to sit on it. And if we're going to talk about 3 weeks, that November 18th date actually is, we will have that 3 weeks of data in hand to be able to make a decision. So that's where we're at. I mean, we're transporting students distanced. There's procedures on the bus, there's procedures in the school, around the school. Lots of discussions about keeping students distanced, and people sending pictures of students not exactly 6 feet apart. Certainly elementaries, far easier to keep kids structured throughout the day. Middle school is actually very vigilant. They have a very, I would say, a hypersensitive staff to COVID. And it just so happens to be the personalities at play. So the middle school is very religious right now about distancing. At the high school, when you've got older students who have a lot of independent, autonomous time, it's a constant reminder. So, but most importantly, people have, students and staff have been great about wearing masks. Absolutely, there have been those that want to challenge it, do the chin protector versus an actual wearing of the mask, or just outright defiance. You can't make me do this. So that's happened, but it's been very minimal. I think as a community, everyone is appreciating being in school and wanting to do everything they can to keep everyone in school. So so far, I would say it has gone very well. Absolutely, hiccups, kinks, technology, platforms, learning the new system. There's certainly been challenges, but overwhelmingly the responses from families has been very, very positive. So, any questions? I said I was going to say 3 words, and what did I talk for 20 minutes? Shocker.
Well, I was just going to say, Brian, can you talk real quick about one-to-one, where we're at on that, and also meals, because I know that's been a past topic of interest as well.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
So I believe we talked about this in months ago, that we committed to a one-to-one initiative. Basically, the first 2 years of this this new lease are completely paid for either through a state technology grant or ESSER money, CBRF money, which is similar money that the towns received for COVID relief. So we're committed and ready for the one-to-one. It just so happens that we decided to go one-to-one with Chromebooks at the same exact time the rest of the entire world did, quite literally the world. So we put an order in, I don't know if it was the very end of July or beginning of August, and we're due for an update on when those are supposed to come in this week. So we're expecting that hopefully next week.
Yeah, they ship. We got notice yesterday that they shipped. I don't know if they're shipping. So they actually ship. So we're thinking Monday or Tuesday they should be here.
So not from HP to CDW, but actually on the way to us.
Yeah.
Awesome. So so next week we have another roughly 1,000 devices in hand. And as you can imagine, 1,000 devices is not small. So then begins the process of our tech crew has a great, they're well-tuned machine now, their whole assembly line of unboxing, setting up, putting asset tagging, coding, making sure all the right stuff is there for our insurance policies and stuff, and then getting those into the hands of students. So we are moving. So if those 950 some odd devices are really here next week, I would say by the Thanksgiving holiday, we will have a device. And we've said we're putting a device in every student's hand. There will certainly be families who have said, I don't want one, right? We can't force families to take a device. There were some challenges with technology connecting to our networks with personally owned devices. So I think that ultimately some people will realize it actually works better when the devices are connected. They're Chromebooks, right? There's nothing sexy about them. They're a device that connects to the internet and gets us the basic content to connect to Google Classroom or to Google Meet or Zoom. Does Zoom okay? And so it's a very basic tool, but it's an important one given the format that we're in. So we are well on our way there. And again, no impact to the budget at this point for at least 2 years. And then you also talked to Narissa about meals. So we talked about the meals program that was set up in the spring, delivering by bus, delivering, curbside pickup. We started the year with that and a commitment from federal programs for reimbursements through December 31st of 2020. That was recently extended to June 30th of 21. So for the entirety of this school year, we can feed for free any child, not just a student, any child between the ages of 0 and 18. So we have yet to hand any meals to newborns, but anyone up through the age of 18 is eligible to receive free reimbursable meals. So students families are picking them up on Monday mornings curbside at each of the schools. The middle school, high school is the earliest that can start at 7:30. And then also via bus route. So if you know of anyone, all they need to do is even simpler. It's on the Stay Connected page. There's a survey to fill out. Even easier, people can call or email Lucinda Ward, who's our food service director. She is more than happy to just take people's emails and information directly and get folks set up on our bus routes. And so on Mondays, we're not running buses. So we are actually, for no additional cost, able to deliver meals out to all 3 towns. Again, in Salisbury, in the spring, it was just Salisbury. Now it's any town. So all 3 towns are having bus meals deliveries, curbside pickups. And again, can't be said enough, our cafeteria staff have gone to the unbelievable lengths to make this all happen. And so what was Lucinda being very innovative back in March has turned into kind of the norm, and it's a model that many districts have adopted. So there was another publication, I'm blanking on the name, that she just sent to Kyle and I today, because they're doing a write-up on the program that she put into place. So it is a huge value and a huge add for our families in the district to be able to have these foods or these meals at 0 cost. So that will continue right through June. So again, if you do have any families, again, they could be attending another school. If they're if they're living in our towns, they have the ability, and we don't even have to confirm that. If families show up to pick up meals with kids, we can hand them. And it's 10 meals a week. So it's a breakfast, it's a grab and go breakfast, and it's a grab and go lunch. And these are reheatable. It's not just a cheese stick and a banana. It's actually full reheatable meals. So it's an impressive program. So again, hats off to Lucinda and the entire crew.
Yes, and beverages too, which is something else that's really nice. I've heard about that from a lot of parents, because there's basically a regular milk, a chocolate milk, and a juice for every day of the week.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So it's impressive, and the meals are the stuffed crust pizza, chicken smackers with mashed potatoes and corn, nachos with beef and vegetable. I mean, they're a nice meal, so I don't think anybody's going hungry when they grab those big bags of pickup.
It is not these square frozen pizzas that we all got in the cafeteria when we were kids. Very different.
I think that's outstanding.
Yeah.
It's just outstanding.
Really is. And it's,
Oh,
it's a federal program, and the leniency, which, and I think this is Massachusetts, I'll give credit to, the leniency with the way that it's coded. So for example, a family picks up 10 meals on Monday for their kids, right? They have 5 kids, picks up 50 meals on Monday. We get reimbursed in full for those from the federal government. And it's actually a higher rate than it actually costs us. So it's paying for labor and all that. When those kids come in for their cohort, say on Tuesday and Thursday, they can get an additional grab and go breakfast on their way in the door and an additional lunch when they go to the cafeteria for their lunch. So they can put those meals on the shelf in the fridge, and then they have meals over the weekend, use it for a dinner. So, I mean, it really is a phenomenal program. And again, I give Lucinda credit for eking every possible nuance out of this program, and she's done a tremendous job. So it is phenomenal. So again, spread the word. Anything, if you need information from us, I mean, there's lots on our Stay Connected page. There's actually a grab and go meals section. But if there's anything we can provide, please shoot me an email or have folks shoot me an email. Happy to have you reposting it on your websites or anything else. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, and I know we have families with younger kids that are using it. We have families that are homeschooling in the district that are using it. So it's reaching a lot of families, which has been, it's part of it's just, parents say the schedule is a crazy one that everybody's dealing with. So part of it is just convenience, but part of it is also, people are in between jobs, underemployed at this point. They're folks that in a lot of cases have never had to reach out for help before. And I think it's an easy give for us to be able to say, look, this is for every kid in the district. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. There's no, there's no, I don't know, admitting that there's anything like, it can be any family. It's no commentary, I guess, on where you're sitting personally, because you're getting it and the person down the street's getting it, and the bus is just continuing to stop. I think there are 6 runs now, 6 bus runs.
I believe
7.
so. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So it literally just goes house to house to house, and people, pick them up at the bus stop or go over and pick them up at one of the schools.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah,
very good.
Takes the
A lot
stigma.
of positive feedback.
Yeah. And that's been the most amazing thing, is there's the families who have always taken advantage of those supports. And then there's the folks who don't because of the stigma, and it's taken that away, which is great. So, and, for our costs, we're NRT is our transportation company. They're based in Newbury there by on Hanover Street. They have agreed to any day that a bus isn't running, we want them to keep our drivers. And we have all but 2 drivers are out on medical leave right now, and everyone else is our current drivers. But as long as they keep our drivers intact and paid, we're paying them at 78%. So they're doing all of these runs, midday K runs, these runs where the buses would normally be running. Since they're getting paid the 78%, they're not charging us the full rate for any of these buses. It's only when they're running their full daily runs that they charge us the actual contract cost. So, they've been a great company to partner with. There's other cities or towns that have taken a less amenable approach, a less collegial approach in working with them, and they've had a slightly less positive response, but they've been great to work with throughout this entire process since last March.
So questions on any of that for Brian? I know it was a lot to cover. All right. And I guess I'll add to that one of the things that the school committee did last night was preview a survey that's going to be going out to families, going to be surveying staff, the student council is working with the high school principal on a survey for students, because obviously this is a huge change for pretty much every student in the district. Even the ones that were already in remote often switch teachers, they switch classmates. So big shift for everybody, and we want to, see how that's going. And I think, Brian said this, we have limited resources. So there's limitations on how much adjustment can be made. So the key here is going to be, if there are things that are really not going well, to try and make some smart, figure out where kind of where we need to triage the most, and make some, smart choices about where resources can go. So whether they're financial or staff or whatever they happen to be.
Absolutely.
Any other comments, questions?
Oh, we should also mention too, so part of the, through the 3 towns, I don't know if any of you have had a chance to meet her. Her name is Kristen Jolivet. So she's working with Deb Rogers as the Newbury Health agent, Jack Morris and Frank Marchigiani, I think I'm like 95% right with his, how he pronounced his name. And so she's actually our point of contact now. So obviously the 3 town health agents, there are public health nurses, but Kristen is a nurse as well. And she's now, and actually I had an email earlier today, they've got all their trained contact tracers ready to roll. We have a whole list of volunteer tracers. There are some that they have actually will be paid through the town or through the collaborative. And so I know that the 3 towns committed funding for Kristen's salary to make sure that we have a point of contact specifically at the high school level, where one case could have rippling effects throughout all the 3 towns, and it could get pretty extensive pretty quickly. So huge, that's a huge boon. And I can tell you there aren't any other towns or districts that, when we talk about the way this is set up, when I talk to other superintendents, specifically other regions, they've got nothing of the sort. So tremendously appreciative to the towns for supporting that. And the 3 town health agents have been phenomenal. So.
Yeah. I should say there are districts out there that are in dire straits right now. So as far as contact tracing goes,
yeah.
I hear nightmare stories of one teacher, 50 close contacts, and that's a hard thing to go through when you don't have the resources.
Yeah. All right.
So, all right. Moving on to the fiscal year 21 budget update.
So, I mean, fairly quick, but just to, and I think probably similar to the cities and towns, we know that, I don't remember the date, seems like a year and a half ago, it was probably 6 minutes ago, but the state did confirm a couple months ago that through joint resolution that unrestricted aid, UGA aid to you as towns and Chapter 7 to the district was set. So it was flatlined from fiscal 20. So for us, that meant we lost about $68,000 over what we assumed. So that, I believe months ago when we sat around this screen, we were talking about a potential and talking with Rep Mira or Rep Hill or Senator Tarr. They were looking back a decade prior, and there were years where 10%, 15%, 20% Chapter 70 reduction. So at one point we were looking at modeling what $2 million in cuts to Chapter 70 would have looked like. And I can tell you it would have decimated the district. So obviously the 3 towns, thank you, supported the budget, even though that was a considerable challenge for the communities. And so having committed to that at the June town meeting, we did have a budget, which was not the case for a lot of regions. We did have a budget rolling into the new year. And we moved forward assuming we would potentially have some significant Chapter 70 cuts. So knowing that we're only losing 68,000 in the grand scheme of things, that is a number we can work with. The other 2 big caveats that we're waiting for are circuit breaker and regional transportation. Obviously, you know this. So the town assessments make up over 75% of our revenues. Chapter 70, obviously the second largest chunk, and then a significant chunk through circuit breaker, special education reimbursements, and regional transportation. As of the House budget that came out today, that actually increased regional transportation over the governor's budget and decreased circuit breaker slightly. I have not heard, I don't know if you have, Narissa, as far as a calculation for that circuit breaker. My guess, quite honestly, is that isn't about removing funding rather than adjusting to assumed costs. Both regional transportation and circuit breaker are reimbursement programs. So the vast majority of districts did save money last spring for special education costs. So because of that, there's an assumed that last year's costs driving this year's reimbursements, that overall to reimburse at a 75% rate, there would be less funds needed in order to do that. So we don't know what that means, but again, we were contemplating a $250,000 cut to each of those. We have a list of cuts or savings, and it was mostly withheld, deferred hires or savings through health insurance, premium holidays that I know other districts had through Maya as well. And so we're hopeful that the fiscal 21 budget is going to be a lot better than, we know for a fact it's going to be better than we had at our worst scenario. But hopefully it's going to come in pretty strong. So that's, I know you as the towns are following this as well, and Neil, Tracy, and Debbie are spending their days trying to anticipate what it means as well. But I don't know the timeline for when a budget is assumed at this point. I've heard people talk about the fact that certainly before the governor issues his budget House 1 in third week of January, that the hope was that the plan was that there would be a finalized fiscal 21 budget before the fiscal 22 budget process begins and kicks off. I don't believe there's any law that requires that, but that is my understanding of their target. So we are in a fairly decent place for fiscal 21. We do have a little over 800,000 in CVRF, ESSER, and technology grant funding. A couple $100,000 of that can continue into next year, but the majority of that is expendable this year. So some of the big costs that we've spent the COVID monies on, we have spent close, I don't know the figure, between $150,000 and $200,000 on an HVAC assessment, as well as improvements and repairs to our systems. There was not a dollar spent in Rowley, simply because of the fact that the town spent $40 million upgrading their systems and revamping their entire school. But from replacing exhaust vents and exhaust fans on roofs, to fixing univents, to fixing rooftop units, replacing filters with higher MERV ratings. Kyle actually went through the report last night done by Airdyne Solutions. We assessed the air flow in every single space, not even in a classroom. We're talking closets, everything across the entire district. In any space, 4 exchanges per hour is the standard you're looking for. The vast majority, after some work and improvements, have well exceeded 4. If you go near the middle school, high school gymnasium right now, as you round the corner down the hallway, you can literally hear the wind whistling by your ears. There's so much air exchange. And so in those places where we don't have that 4 ACH, we are putting portable HEPA units, HEPA filtration units. So we actually met with our insurance company. We're a Fred C. Church company or district now, and talking about risk mitigation and that whole process. And I don't believe there's any credits we get, but in talk about risk reduction and risk assessment, they were saying that compared to where there's many districts they work with across New England, we are far ahead of many districts in regards to our attention to air quality. And that's where a lot of their claims, they're saying, are coming from. So people suing the districts for someone getting sick, a staff member suing for getting sick. It's a lot of money, and certainly it was COVID relief funds. But they said just the fact that you have the report alone will likely be a tremendous tool to have in the tool chest if and when those claims come down the pipe. So that's where we are financially. There's still a lot of unknowns. The finance subcommittee obviously does get monthly reports, and we are targeting a draft adjusted fiscal 21 budget on November 24th is the next finance subcommittee meeting. So that will be next on the agenda, hoping to be able to truly codify. We now have, with the shift to hybrid, those staff members who are out on leave, taking FMLA leave or FFCRA leave or taking a leave of absence, all those costs are we've documented everything, everything's confirmed. And so now we're able to cost all that out, and just to make sure that all the assumptions are panning out. So by the 24th, we'll have hopefully a draft adjusted budget provide to the committee, the full committee in December. And that obviously will be the basis for starting to develop the 22 budget, which seems like we just finished the 21. So So I will say there are
Question?
definitely areas where we're saving. There are areas where we're spending a lot of money. We have additional COVID funds, and then there are areas like transportation, some special education costs that are not. There's currently 7 or 8 outstanding open positions, specifically for instructional assistants, and that's bad from a academic instructional standpoint. But on the flip side of that, when we're not paying those salaries, that's funds that aren't being spent. And so our goal this year is, in everything that we do, be as frugal as possible, because we anticipate next year is going to be very challenging. So ending this year without depleting revolving fund balances, without, we don't have any stabilization funds. E&D is going to be certified in that vicinity of $500,000. So not depleting all of that. So as we roll into fiscal 22 and the development process, that we have some assumptions of some security on what we anticipate will be a challenging year. So just keep going into fiscal 22, because there's not a lot to say yet about fiscal 22.
I was just going to ask if there are any questions before we move on.
Well, I just want to say bravo to you guys, because, you took a tremendous undertaking. You're feeding all these people. You've got the air exchange going. To me, from the outside looking in, what you've done is absolutely Herculean, and kudos to you. We're lucky that we have you all. And I know for the committee, well, Brian, you too, and you're really, you and your team are part of the committee as well. But I know it hasn't been easy. I know it hasn't been easy, and my heart goes out to you all. And job very, very well done.
Thank you, Alicia. And I was gonna say, I keep saying, right, I get paid for this. Kim gets paid for this. The committee members, what do you get, $1,000 stipend? It has been a 24-hour-a-day job as a job. And so as a committee member who, their primary role is other things, right? Full-time whatevers, to do this at night, I don't know how they're doing it. So it has been, I've heard Kim say it many times, and Kim deserves a huge amount of credit over there in the top right corner of my screen. Not sure where you use for your screen. Just there are so many facets to this. Kyle is not able to be here tonight, but just the HVAC, the hours and hours and hours of just understanding what this all means. With Chris Walsh, Chris, the entire maintenance crew, Lucinda and the crew, and teachers. The teachers have, we've gone through negotiations, and you've seen it. There are a lot of districts that have landed at fisticuffs. There are a lot of districts that have landed with demonstrations outside and people being fined, and we didn't land there. And we could have, right? We could have taken a hard stance, but ultimately the students benefit and the towns benefit, because we took an approach that worked, and our teachers were reasonable. They could have easily, there are certainly things that we pushed and said no, and they stuck to what's good for kids. And obviously the goal was keeping everyone safe and keeping themselves safe too. But there was nothing fun about the last 8 months, but not that we're on this other side, on this downslope, just eating bonbons, but to only be doing this 23 hours a day rather than 24, it does feel like, okay, everyone's breathing now. And it is literally taken a village. I mean, to say that it's taken a village, it just doesn't do it justice. So committee, administration, principals, you have no idea what our 5 principals have done over the last months. It's just been incredible. So thank you for saying that, Alicia, but that is certainly shared by many. So.
Any other questions on fiscal year 21 budget?
I'll say quickly that, I was there when the decision was trying to be made to go hybrid or not go hybrid and everything. And it's a hard one. I mean, no one has a crystal ball, but I will say, I have a grandson that is an only child, and he is just delighted to go back to school. So it's been, 2 days of, it's really worth it, I'll tell you. He's just delighted to be back in school with his friends.
That's great to hear. And there, and is even through all the angst of developing the remote model and the hybrid model and the high priority, they're the vast majority of folks within those models, right? Those who are fully remote, those who are in hybrid, those are the high priority. The vast majority have had nothing but positive to say. No one will go under false pretenses and say that it's ideal, but I think everyone, families have been so reasonable and so understanding, and just, coming at this with a realistic understanding that everyone's doing the best they can within the resources we're allotted. And I, can't thank families enough for that. So,
Brian,
yeah.
how much would you say that the students have lost with these? I mean, how much, if you were to say a percentage, I mean, because obviously you're not teaching at the same level that you were before, especially, with this going back and forth and all of that with this COVID stuff. So how much would you say has the kids' education been impaired much by so far what's going on at the school this year?
So I would, that's a great question, Peter. So I would say you have to take it spring and then into fall, right? I think it's a combined impact. Our effectiveness this fall is not even comparable to where we were in the spring. I will say that. Even at the state level, what we were allowed to do, right? When it first started, we weren't allowed to take attendance. We weren't allowed at the state level to require anything. So the spring, to say, was it a total loss? I wouldn't say it was a total loss, but there's definitely regression. We're in the process, we're well into the process and have data that Kim has been looking at with principals and teachers as far as beginning of year assessments. So those students who we had last year, there's certainly a noticeable, we do literacy and math assessments. The projections were literacy you don't lose at a rate that you lose math, right? Math is not necessarily an ingrained skill in some. And that panned out in our data, right? Universally in the data that was taken, there was regression with literacy skills. There was significantly more regression with math skills. So literally as we speak in the process of looking at that data, Kim and principals and math specialists and literacy specialists and working with teachers to get interventions up and running. So our point, our drive at this point is using that data, trying to replicate all those interventions that we normally would in school, trying to replicate that remotely whenever possible, or for the in-person, in those 2 days. So I don't know, Kim, if you would venture a guess. I don't know that I would venture a percentage. I would say there was absolutely regression. Yes, I think that it totally depends on the student. It depends on the age, and I think the commitment level. Right, there are those who we have struggled to re-engage since we left on Friday, February 13th. Right, that moment, we kind of lost some students, and it has been yeoman's work, and people have driven to houses and opened them up in the morning, right? Everything to get those families engaged. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there are those students who on Monday the 16th were ready to go, and man, they've been with it ever since, even when it wasn't mandated. So I think it varies, but I would, have to absolutely admit there has been regression for students in general. So now our job is, how do we mitigate that? How do we split that and figure out where the gaps are? It's not something that we can remedy, if you will, or intervene in one fell swoop. It's a matter of maintaining, and we do formative assessments for literacy and math up through middle school, right, Kim? Do we do it into high school? No, it stops at middle school. So, so we continue to track students independently, right? It's not just, okay, you finished geometry, you finished algebra. It's all the way up to the middle school. It's where we're tracking student success, and teachers are adapting their instruction to fill those gaps where they need to be. So.
It's tough. I mean, if there was, I don't know if you would offer anything like remedial classes, maybe, even in the summer. I don't know if that would work or anything, but there's going to be obviously a lot of ground for these kids to make up if this pandemic goes on for like 2 or even 3 years. It's going to be it's going to be a tough, slog.
Yep, absolutely. And actually, we were talking today about reinstating the math team. Was it the math team at the elementary level, right? So what can we do? Things that we can do remotely that engage students back around the content. So not just, it can be fun, right? Good fun is good, social is good, but thinking it's got to be creative. So, everything we can do remotely, or again, with students in 2 days a week, certainly putting those interventions back in place. But yes, it's going to have to be, it changed the course of how we will educate for the coming years for these students.
I heard also that then you're not going to have MCAS. I mean, is there a hold on these standardized tests for this year?
You heard that? Where'd you hear it from? Because where you heard it from, I want to know that it's truth. That is last spring it was waived, and then there was a delay, and so currently it has not been called off yet for this year. So our Commissioner Riley has routinely shared, I would say superintendents are being cordial, but are fairly strong in their opinion that there's just no way to fairly assess students, right? I mean, this it's not good for kids. So I get the accountability piece, and that's important. So as of right now, the first testing window at the high school, I believe, is the very end of January. So, so as we talk through that, the commissioner has not shied away from sharing that he understands the concern, but his hands are tied because it's a federal requirement. So the first step is a federal waiver. And then once a federal waiver is granted, it has to be legislatively adjusted at the state. It is not a commission. It's not an executive branch. It's a legislative branch decision for that requirement. And then it would allow him to adjust. So if I were a betting man, I would say there will be adjustments. I don't think that's going to happen quickly.
Oh.
But as of right now, it's on.
Yeah. Well, that's tough.
Yeah. So. Okay.
Any other questions for Brian? You want to talk about fiscal year 22?
Yeah. So I think, fiscal 22 is quickly the one data point that we know now is with the shift, our population is down roughly 160 students. So 170 students, sorry. We are still waiting. The SIMS process, the student information process, is an October 1 count. We report everything we know about our students. Now districts are in the process of saying, hey, we have 7 of your children through choice. So that happens from across the state. That all gets certified. So usually before the new year, in the month of December, late December, we are notified of our charter numbers, our choice numbers. But we did lose a significant number of students this year to private schools, as well as, I remember the exact number, significant number of homeschoolers for the current year, given the pandemic. So we don't lose any dollars per se for a private student or a homeschooler. We will be charged $5,000 per student who choices out, and something more astronomical like $13,000 per student for the charter. But where those numbers come into effect is for foundation enrollment for fiscal 22. So the one positive, right? We keep saying we're usually balking about the state not coming up and supporting the towns with the budget. In this case, because the towns are spending so high above foundation, we only ever get minimum aid anyway. So if we were to get $20 per pupil for those 176 kids, we would be losing $3,400. So it really is, in our situation, a very, very minimal and non-material impact as far as next year's budget. So there could be, again, charter and choice, that could be a very real impact, and we're waiting to see that. And so that's fiscal 22. The one thing I can tell you is that we've had some very brief discussions with finance subcommittee, with my leadership team, as well as the committee in general, in regards to taking a much more simplified approach. Our hope is that we're not to delay the final budget on March 15th, where it needs to be certified for the towns, but just even the starting point, and so we have real data. You know, I think it was Cliff Pierce, he's not here tonight, who, when we sat, I believe in May, and said, we understand this is a very real, this is a very different time, and you need the budget to be adjusted. And, you know, the towns basically said, look, it's tough, we're good this year, but next year it's going to be really challenging. So those words have been ringing in my head since May. And so our approach is going to be not here's a bunch of new spending that we need to have, but doing everything we can to mitigate costs, mitigate new costs, mitigate fixed costs, and come in with a budget that keeps all of our services intact, but brings that forward with the most manageable number as possible for fiscal 22. So I think my discussions with Narissa is, how do we condense the process? Usually we're asking principals to say, all right, what is it you need? And over multiple nights asking all these requests. And I don't think that's fair to do to the principals when we realize and know that at this point, you know, this is about survival, and there are costs that we never thought we would be looking at and needing to account for in a budget. So I think it's going to be a slightly different approach, but I think it's important to acknowledge that we realize it's going to be a very challenging year for our towns as well. So I think that's about it so far for fiscal 22.
Any questions?
Owen coming back to sing.
Sorry, that was all my dogs leaving with my husband, who's taking them out for a walk.
I was going to say, I heard
That was all that ticky-tacky sound.
How to open a door? That was impressive. Sorry.
Yeah. Any questions for Brian on anything? Because this is the last item on our agenda. So,
Any questions for Kim?
Yeah.
It's been kind of quiet tonight.
anybody?
Oh my God.
I guess I will
think-
note too, real quick, that that we did change up kindergarten too as part of
Yes.
hybrid. Yeah. So we had removed full day K and had not been charging any families this year because we felt it was inappropriate to have students in remote learning for a full school day at that age. That's a lot. So we had moved to a half day already. Brian, through some finagling with Kim, managed to make it so that we have AM and PM kindergarten half days happening 4 days a week. So that for 4 days, so there's a Monday, they're on a remote half day, all the kindergartners, and then Tuesday through Thursday, the kindergarten teachers have half their class in the morning and then the other half of the class in the afternoon. So all of those kindergartners are getting in for a half day, 4 days a week, which has been a huge advantage for them. I can honestly say there's been nothing but positive, that literally no complaints, no anything, just absolute gratitude on that one. And I was at Pine Grove today during the kindergarten transition, and those kids, they came in talking a mile a minute and we're just so excited. And yeah, it was just nice to see. So
You can see the smiles through the masks.
you can see the smiles through the masks.
Do they have to wear a mask,
You do.
those kids?
Yep. Yeah,
They do?
this
Even the small ones, like 4 years old or 5, whatever yeah.
preschool, yeah, all the way up through. The
Wow.
state said 2 through 12. The district opted to make it all students because obviously, you know, there's still concerns about what they could bring home, the staff members that are in with them. So it's not just the students, and even the pre-K kids have been excellent about
I was
wearing.
going to say, so the follow-up
Really?
question, Peter, is who's the best mask wearers? Preschoolers. They could teach us all.
Preschool, really?
It's literally, it's like, it just becomes, my nephew is 4 years old, and Giovanni, and literally,
Yeah.
he's telling us what, it just becomes, right? They're
Second hat.
young
They-
and
yeah.
old, it's just normal, right? They have cool ones with trucks
Yeah.
on, whatever. And it's, I would have thought, right? We all thought that was gonna be the most challenging.
Yeah.
Nope, piece of cake.
But I have to say
Wow.
that the preschool are also the kiddos that they want to just hug each other, right? Like they just, there's just no preschool without like, they want to play in the kitchen set with their friends or the blocks with their, and the teachers are like, okay, you know, you need to spread out. So it is a good thing that they are very good with their masks, because otherwise they are like magnets, or not magnets, but they just want to, they're funny.
Mm. Yeah.
But they're super
Must be cute.
It's very cute.
Yeah.
Mm.
Who would have thought masks would be cute?
Any other questions? I mean, you know, we'll try to keep you updated as you go. I honestly, there was a point where we were already in hybrid and I was like, oh, I should have sent an email out and to let everyone know that we're going to hybrid, because I know you don't get all the district communications, and I apologize for that. But I can say honestly, through that period, I was going 6:30 in the morning. I was getting up and there were already emails in my inbox, and I was going to bed at midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, trying to empty it out and finish it. So that, you know, when I woke up the next morning, I wasn't already way behind. It was a really, really tough time getting, you know, just dealing with everything that was going on. So I apologize for that, but hopefully it'll be a little quieter and more copacetic from now on. I have to say, a lot of families we've been able to build some sort of relationship with that hadn't necessarily been there before. And I think that's gone a long way, because people are more willing to check in now in between, before something gets to the point where they feel like they're in crisis mode and have to reach out. And there's I mean, it's very emotional. We're talking about people's kids. So it tends to be a reaction when you get to that point. And I think, I feel like, at least with some families, we're getting, they're more comfortable with coming in a middle ground and saying, can you just answer a question for me? And when we're at that point, rather than this reaction, like, I heard from my friend that this is happening and I am 100% against it, that's not the point where we want to be at. We want to be at the point where they're coming in and saying, like, I heard this, can you validate it? Or can you tell me what's going on, or what the plan is, or when we'll know more, that type of thing. So that's a hard thing to do with the size district we have, but I think, you know, I think we're getting there, and then that's going to help out. So
I was gonna say, if you're ever looking on the main Triton Schools website, under that bottom banner, there's a big blue button that says Triton Stays Connected. That website literally has everything from the grab and go meals to stay connected pages for each school. You can get to everyone's Google Classroom page. And then right there on that main page, you can find, you know, the main plan, some hybrid and remote updates, but that there's almost like a stream, a blog that has every single communication. Everything that goes out via email or text gets posted there as well. So it literally has a record of every possible communication. So while we can't add you into our systems because it's all folks tied to students, certainly if you're ever looking for something, that has every communication that goes out from the committee, from me, from Kim, from Kyle, you name it. All right.
anything else? We do not have a next meeting date on the calendar right now. I'm assuming, unless anyone has a concern about it, that we would go out to December at this point to have the next DCC meeting. That could put us on the 3rd. It could put us on the 10th. If we want to stay on a Thursday, we can move to another night of the week if that works better for others. I'm open to options. This was the first Thursday. So the first Thursday in December, if we want to stay there, would be the 3rd.
Will you have budget numbers by then, do you think? Or preliminary budget numbers, I should say?
Fiscal year 21 or fiscal year 22? Upcoming year or current year?
Not current year.
Upcoming year, we would get the state numbers, which is where our budget process really kind of kicks into high gear, the 4th week of January.
Okay.
So it's farther down the road. We'll be starting our internal budget process, looking at things like where there might be increases, you know, contractuals that we see coming, things like that. That we'll get into that, you know, starting this fall, really into the beginning of January. But we won't we don't really kick our budget cycle into high gear until we have those state numbers, because I mean, that's, you know, a lot of what we do hinges on those numbers.
Okay. Because I don't know if we really need to meet in December unless the other people on the committee feel as if it's important. But I mean, with the holidays upcoming, and I mean, we could kick it off in January, then you might have more information then.
Yep. So last year, I believe we met at the beginning of January and at the end of January. I don't believe we met in December last year, and that was probably the reason that we met twice in January. We had a real quick kind of, this is where we're at internally with budget in the beginning of January. And then traditionally what happens at the end is we get the state numbers, the school committee does a workshop, and then we have a DCC meeting following that very quickly. It's usually like the tail end of January or the beginning of very beginning of February that happens. So, I mean, we can look at scheduling one for early January if you want to do that, looking at something like the 7th, maybe.
I think that's a good idea. Neil, what do you think?
Sure. I don't think we need to meet in December, frankly.
Okay. I will absolutely go with one less meeting on my calendar.
Oh, we need to meet. Are we saying the 7th of January?
7th would be the first Thursday. So I don't know if Thursdays are the good day to stick with. That's where we had been in the past, because that seemed to have been the best day for everyone.
Yeah, that's good for me. Yeah.
Yep.
I think that works out well.
Okay. We'll plan for January 7th then. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but have a happy holiday, everyone. In my brain, somehow we're still back in March too. So it's been one long day, the last 7 months. So, all right, sounds good. Thank you all for coming out. If there are questions in between, don't hesitate to reach out. I know people have in the meantime to just ask if there are, you know, if there have been questions. Don't hesitate to do that, because that's, you know, that's what we're here for. I'm happy to answer a question. I know Brian's happy to answer questions if we, you know, if things are coming up. So yeah, again, please just don't hesitate to reach out, because again, I'd rather let's handle those questions rather than, you know, get to the point where if there's concern about something, it gets to a boiling point. So although I know we're all good.
All right, thanks.
Well,
Thank you,
Job
everyone.
well done once again.
I agree.
Keep up the good work.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
See you.
See you
All
later.
right.
Thanks.
Happy
Have a good
holidays.
night.
All right.
Everybody.
Bye.
Good night,